Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Ali Hasanain. I'm an assistant professor of economics at the Lahore University of Management Sciences, where we're continuing with our Pakistan at 100 initiative podcast series. Pakistan's relationship with China will be one of the most important determinants of where we end up in the year 2047 when we turn 100 years old. I recently sat down with Mustafa Hyder Sayed, the executive director of the Pakistan-China Institute, where we discussed both the Pak-China relationship and specifically CPEC and the way forward. Have a listen.
So Mustafa, thank you first of all for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ali. Thank you.
Just to begin, why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself and the Pak-China Institute?
Well, the Pakistan-China Institute is the oldest go-to think tank on Pakistan-China relations. It was established in 2009 by Senator Mustafa Hyder Sayed, who had the foresight of seeing the important role that China would assume in this region and globally. And since it was 2009, it predates Cpac and all that fanfare that we see now, and everyone jumping on that bandwagon. And the purpose, the reason why this institute was established, Ali, was because there was an excellent high-level government-to-government relationship. There were high-level exchanges historically,
Absolutely.
defense, diplomacy. Pakistan, China supported each other on its core interests. But there was a vacuum on a people-to-people level. There was no platform where professionals, academia like yourself, companies, cultural aspects, artists for that matter, could connect. And this institute was established to serve as that platform where civil society on both borders could act in unison, debate, deliberate, connect, and realize what we now today call the Silk Road.
Okay, so that's your mission. Tell me about the nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts.
Yes.
There are a lot of nuts and there are a lot of bolts. So we are working on everything under the sun when it comes to the Pakistan-China relationship. As we were talking earlier, SEZs is a very important subject, part and parcel of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. We have a very robust Chinese language program, which we have a cultural aspect to how to do business with China, and Mandarin for professionals. We started Chinese language classes for students in collaboration with the Root School system about 10 years ago. And now we've graduated to professionals. People who want to work with China, they have to learn Chinese. And that's the biggest barrier between cultures, as you know. We are doing a lot of research. We have a monograph series called Corridors, Culture and Connectivity. What does CPEC mean for Balochistan? What are the facts about CPEC, and what's a lot of fiction about CPEC? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. What are the cultural aspects of CPEC, and what is the cultural collaboration that we can have with China? So we have that. Then we host a regional initiative. It's called the Pakistan-China-Afghanistan Trilateral Dialogue. And that is basically talk about BRI and how other countries can sort of engage in this connectivity, in this mega connectivity project. And then we have something called the CPEC Media Forum, in which we talk about articulating narratives of CPEC. Because as you know, media is playing an increasingly important role in how we see things, how our perceptions are molded. So we have the Media Forum, which we host every year, once in Pakistan and next year in China. And this year we're hosting in China, in fact, next month.
Okay.
Then the PCI is honored to be part of the SILKS, Silk Road Think Tanks Network, created by the Development Research Center of the State Council of China.
Right.
And Pakistan is represented by the Pakistan-China Institute in this platform. Interestingly, this year's SILKS meeting is in December, and it's in Paris. So the BRI is not confined to this part of the world.
Okay.
So we are doing a lot of different things, and working on Gwadar. Interestingly, we've just commissioned a monograph of comparing the port of Paris, which is being developed by China and Greece, with the port of Gwadar. So what's the overlap between BRI in Eastern Europe and South Asia? So, excuse me. So we are working on a host of different initiatives. And our objective is to have in-depth, thorough conversations and research which scratches the surface. Because we see a lot of headlines. We see a lot of sweeping statements when it comes to China, when it comes to CPEC.
Yeah.
But we need to go beyond that in order to have a more informed debate and also in order to have more informed policy made about this.
That's music to my ears, because the whole purpose of the Pakistan 100 initiative is also to get more informed ideas and sort of empirics to a general audience. And so that's what I want to sort of start exploring with you. It's been about 5 years or 6 years since in 2013 the two governments announced that they were going to reconfigure the relationship along the lines of both a transport corridor and then also the various other non-transport related engagements that they've had in the economic corridor in general, such as power plants and so on. Could you just, because a lot of Pakistanis even today might not understand CPEC as well as you might want, can you give us just the headlines of what the engagement is like, and then maybe pivot to telling us how you read the current engagement in terms of the depth of the engagement? You talked about language, how accepted are Mandarin classes now, for example. If you think about government, I'd like to hear about how, for example, the Pakistan government is doing in terms of the depth of engagement and so on. But let's start with just, what is CPEC?
I think that's the most important question. It's the simplest question, and it's also the most complicated question.
It is.
CPEC is seen to be a route which passes from Kashgar to Gwadar, and wherever it goes through will be a lot of bliss and a lot of prosperity, and where it doesn't go through, that areas will remain destitute. Number one, it's not that. Number two, it's seen as a road. It's a one big road, it's a transit corridor between Pakistan and China, and it will serve to give China access to the warm waters, and Pakistan will be left high and dry, you know, as we always have been. This is another, that it's not. CPEC is it's a web of projects, from energy to ports to corridors to culture to connectivity, roads and railways, ports and pipelines, and it is transforming the landscape, economic landscape of Pakistan, and of course, not to mention the special economic zones. So while CPEC is certainly one big artery, I think a good way of defining it would be one corridor, multiple passages. So Thar Coal, for example, the mega project of China Machinery Engineering in public-private partnership with the Sindh government is a case in point of materializing an indigenous coal reserve which was lying untapped, and was doubts were being casted upon the veracity of the coal or what grade it is. It's up and running, it's going into commercial operations, and 30% equity of the Sindh government, the rest is Chinese. Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Karot power project, hydropower, up and running in commercial operations. There was initially a bit of a land issue which got sorted. So apart from the conventional understanding of CPEC, there are these many projects on, of power, of energy, of pipelines, and there's the Gwadar to Nawabshah pipeline project, as you know, which the China Pipeline Bureau is doing to transport the gas that we will be importing to power projects, and it will go into Nawabshah, Sindh. Then there's the, if you look at the past 5 years, Ali, I think the best way of judging CPEC is to see what happened. Did anything change in the past 5 years after the MOU was signed? You have 10,000 megawatts on the national grid. There is much more mobility between cities, between provinces. As you know, Sakar to Multan is a large section of it is already complete, which is being constructed by the China State Engineering Corporation.
Right.
Ultimately, the aim is Karachi to Lahore motorway. Then you have the motorway from, as we were discussing earlier, Gwadar to Karachi, which is complete. So you can actually drive down to Gwadar, and it's an 8-hour drive from Karachi, and it's a safe route. Then there's the special economic zone in Gwadar, where there is a joint venture between a Pakistani company and a Chinese company making electronic bikes, amongst other initiatives. This one is almost up and running. There's a fisheries project, which is $250 million, of making, because Gwadar is like Shenzhen. It's a small town inhabited by fishermen, poor fishermen. So this company has made a fisheries project to give high-speed boats to fishermen so they can go deep sea.
Interesting.
And they bring the fish, they sell them to the company which processes them, and you export it. So these are things which have happened in the past 5 years, and whether it's the World Bank, we have a positive outlook by Moody now. I believe in 2013, before CPEC started, we had about 3% growth. Now it's 5%. And I want to address another thing, because I know you're going to be coming to that in any case, is about a debt trap. Dr. Manzoor, who is our ambassador in WTO and expert on trade, wrote an excellent article in the Express Tribune 2 days ago, which was also voiced, the same thing was voiced by Mr. Wang Yi, the foreign minister and the State Council of China, who was in town about a month ago, that when we talk about debt, and a lot of the issues of our economy are attributed to CPEC, why that's not the case, and why that's a huge misperception. If you look at State Bank's data for 2017, debt servicing of Pakistan, $500 million out of the $5 billion, 10% was going back to China. The rest of that debt, of that $5 billion, minus the $500 million, was to multilateral foreign institutions. So that's very important to understand, that every time there's a new government which comes in, we have this economic issue because the previous government spends a lot, and there's a fiscal issue because of political considerations and other things. So CPEC is not linked to that. We have to de-link that with these woes, economic woes.
So before we can even start talking about those things, we have to understand that, what are the empirical details, right? So you've touched upon some of them. There's been in the press this idea that there are going to be 3 alignments of the road network going up. The eastern alignment is, as you were mentioning, the Karachi-Peshawar motorway. We've got the western alignment, which would be Gwadar through Quetta to Diyai Khan and upwards, up north. And then there's a central alignment, which I believe sort of, in some sense, bypasses Quetta and goes through central, sort of roughly the border of Balochistan and Sindh, right? Is there a place where I can look at those maps, where I can look at how much they're going to cost, when they're going to be rolled out, any sort of feasibilities that are being done for those? Then there's the rail network, as well as the sort of the plans around other power plants, for example, the SECs, which I'm sure we'll come to, this fisheries thing that you were talking about, all of these things. Is there like a central repository of information?
Indeed, there is. And it's called cpecinfo.com.
Okay.
And I would highly recommend that you visit that website. And it is a great database of structured information on CPEC, which project is being executed by which company, and what is the stage it's at.
Okay.
And when you talk about road networks, and you talk about CPEC, as you know, is a project which is till 2030. And this is just the first 5 years which we've passed. And the first 5 years, or the first 8 years at least, are the early harvest projects, the EHP. And that was decided through mutual consultation of the Joint Coordination Committee, which decides which projects are going to have priority over the other ones. Because we had a huge energy crisis, Dr. Saab, the energy projects in CPEC were the first priority of the Chinese and the Pakistani side.
Sure.
And experts from both sides decided these power projects should be done. Those attained the objective of the 10,000 megawatts that we need on the national grid, which have positively reduced the huge energy problem that we had. And now, because the transmission lines have to be upgraded, we still have some issues regarding load shedding, but that is related to the transmission infrastructure, which is also being worked upon. And one of the key projects, as you know, is the Lahore to Matiyari transmission line, which is part of CPEC.
Okay.
So the second phase was about special economic zones, because as you know, we have a huge balance of trade problem. We have a huge balance of payments issue. We aren't exporting goods. We aren't making goods which other countries want. People are not buying our goods for many different reasons.
Yep.
Even our mangoes, our rice, they go to Dubai, they are rebranded, they're sold as Indian basmati rice, etc. So we have a huge problem in accessing markets. What SEZs does is it increases our exports. It relocates industries from China and elsewhere. SEZ is a very open project. It's not confined to any one country. For example, tomorrow you say, I want to go into business enough of teaching economics. You can set up a factory in a special economic zone of CPEC in a joint venture with a Chinese company. So what it serves to do is, because our cost of production is still much cheaper than China's, it relocates industries from China in Pakistan and gives those industries access to sell back to China within Pakistan and regionally, Iran, Afghanistan, and of course using Gwadar, access the world and beyond. So that is the concept of SEZs. And the first two SEZs, as I mentioned earlier during an informal conversation, are Hatar and Rashakai, both in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province.
Okay. So as an economist, I'm trained to look for differences in rules across the economy and to probe why they might exist. Let me do that here, right? So NSEC means that there are different rules in place for firms within the SEC versus versus outside. Now, if it is economically viable for a factory to uproot from China and come and set up in Pakistan somewhere, why do we need an SEC for it? Why don't they come and set up outside an SEC?
Dr. Saab, Pakistan's country risk profile is high.
Okay.
When lenders look at Pakistan, they charge higher interest rates.
Sure.
When insurance companies like Sinosure of China look at Pakistan, they charge a premium because your condition has improved substantially from the past, but you still have a long way to go. And this is the international assessment of international agencies. As you know, we recently joined the Emerging Markets Index in MSCI by Morgan Stanley after 2005. It was last time we were in that was 2005, right? So we recently joined Emerging Markets Index as well. So we have to incentivize. There is a difference between investing in Sweden and investing in Pakistan. And investors will factor that in, and there will be a premium that they will have to pay to their banks, if it's a big investment, to their insurance companies.
Okay.
So we have to have a very realistic approach. We have to solicit investment. We have to market Pakistan. And special economic zones, as you know, when China was opening up, the backbone of Chinese development, apart from infrastructure growth, was SEZs. Do you remember when Deng Xiaoping went to Singapore and he saw that how that island was becoming such a productive center of growth?
Yep.
He said, I want multiple Singapores in
Right.
China.
Yep.
And those were SEZs.
Yep.
That's how the Suzhou Economic Zone came outside Shanghai, how Shenzhen came, which was, of course, Shenzhen, as you know, was a fishing town like Gwadar. Now it's known as the Silicon Valley of the East.
Yeah.
So SEZs, we are where China was 25 years ago. So that is why I believe that special economic zones, if done right, can be the engine that will take this train forward.
So we want to keep this relatively concise, this particular podcast. So I won't sort of probe the SEC issue much further, except to say that the flip side can be that when you protect or create special rules for an industry, you can create a life of its own in terms of the protectionism that you're providing, and you can create political costs to moving away from it. And one example of this, an example that most Pakistanis understand, is the automobile industry, where we've given special rules to that industry, and the efficiency levels aren't after 40 years where we'd like them to be. But instead of going into that debate further, I want to open up and just ask you how you judge the overall governance of CPEC to be. So as a development economist, it's my day job to look at the problems of governance of the economy, and I see that manifest across the economy in various ways. It strikes me that it's likely that the same poor economic management might be representing Pakistan in CPEC. What are the dangers there, and what's the way forward?
Great question. Firstly, Pakistan, or any country for that matter, has never experienced such a high influx of investment from any one country. In recent history, BRI is the biggest diplomatic and economic development agenda, as said by the Asian Development Bank Institute in the Silks conference 1 year ago, right? So, how does Pakistan, a developing country, deal and grapple with this huge influx of investment in different sectors which is coming, which is never used to any of this, which is used to dealing with one-off investments? I think there needs to be a cohesive, coordinated approach with all the provinces and the center, and there has to be an organization, a department, which comprises of private sector, policy makers, economists, and experts of that field to be there working round the clock to make sure that there is due diligence, there is internal feasibilities, there are different case scenarios, plan A, case B, case C, case D, and debate, internal debate on which case is better, which template is better and why. I think that needs to be done. There needs to be more rigorous homework and follow-up that needs to happen. And if you ask me, is there room for improvement? There always is room for improvement.
My reading is that there's lots of room for improvement, specifically in building the human capital that will manage CPEC. Would you agree? All right.
I would say so.
Okay. So then the next, and the reason that this is important to us is, as you mentioned, this is outsized in terms of the amount of work that's happening. And so compared to something else, such as, Pakistan's own efforts at, for example, agriculture in Sindh, CPEC is just on a whole different scale. And so it needs to have the best management and so on. The question that I would have is, can you sort of discuss some of the popular press will have, for example, fears of CPEC, such as the one that we were talking about earlier is cites Hambantota, which is the port in Sri Lanka that was built by China and that ran into financing problems. Are we sort of facing something similar?
I think, as someone said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. We need to have more confidence in ourselves. Pakistan is a very strong country. We have a very strong civil society, and we aren't a pushover. And China has a great track record with Pakistan. It stood by Pakistan and supported us in all our core interests, and we have reciprocated the same. We had a great strategic relationship, which has finally translated into economic relationship. How do we make the most of it? Depends on us. The onus is on us. If you establish a university, when LUMS was established, a cafe will be established in front of it. Someone will open a bookstore, someone will open a candy store, someone will open a library. There's a ripple effect of an investment. Gwadar is going to stay here. No one can lift it and take it anywhere. Hambantota was a political project. It came within the constituency of Raja Pakse. He solicited that investment.
I see.
Within his constituency. Gwadar was lying vacant. We gave it to the Singaporeans. They didn't do anything with it. They sat on it. Nothing happened. We were looking for someone to invest in it, to make a special economic zone, and to run a port, because running a port is a specialized skill, as you know. So the China Overseas Port Holding Company is investing about $100 million in the first 10 years without any return. And then there's a special economic zone being created there. And after 40 years, they're going to hand it back to you. So that is what Gwadar is all about. And when you talk about other investments, who was coming to Pakistan before CPEC? I feel that there has been a rebranding of Pakistan after CPEC. Other countries have started taking Pakistan more seriously. You remember the Newsweek cover, the most dangerous country in the world, niche Pakistan likha hua tha. Now, Pakistan is seen as a destination of investment. And I think that this China-Pakistan economic corridor and that brand that we've built of CPEC is soliciting interest, is soliciting seriousness. And now European countries are coming and saying we want to invest in Pakistan. Saudi Arabia is coming. Iran wants to come, and they've made policy statements regarding this. Turkey. So we are back on the radar. We are back in the game. And I think that as long as we have our own house in order, nothing can impinge upon Pakistan's economy, sovereignty, national security, I think we are good to go.
So this is just too vast a topic for us to do much with in the limited time that we had. Let me give you the final word with the following question. What is the biggest challenge and the area that we can do the most in to increase the impact of CPEC in the next 5 years?
Social development. We need social development, and I think that in these big energy infrastructure projects, in these big ticket items, we need to inculcate a small percentage of social development investment or corporate social responsibility of the company, which is investing in CPEC, in that CPEC project. And that can be a hospital, it can be a school, it can be a maternity clinic, it can be a vocational training institute. We need to develop and train our human resource. Our human resource shouldn't be dying to go to Malaysia, Dubai, and the Middle East to become laborers. We need to train them, we need to increase their skill set, and they need to be employed in projects in Pakistan.
All right. So, Mustafa, look, I'd love to continue this chat for another hour, but we're sort of out of time. Thank you for the generosity of your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.